Commander Vex 9 adjusted his 6 compound eyes and stared at the tactical display with mounting disbelief. The holographic projection showed the human test subjects completing their 3rd consecutive run through the gauntlet of torment in under 47 minutes. Again, this is impossible, he muttered, his mandibles clicking with nervous energy. The gauntlet was designed to break entire battalions of our finest warriors. Lieutenant Kral 2 shuffled closer, his tentacles writhing anxiously. Sir, perhaps there was a malfunction in the testing apparatus? The humans seem to be treating this like some sort of recreational activity. Vex 9 switched the display to show the human staging area. Through the reinforced observation window, he watched in horror as the test subjects were laughing. One of them, a female designated as Test Subject Delta 7, was actually doing what appeared to be stretching exercises while humming a tune. By the 7 moons of Zephyria, Vex 9 whispered. Are they warming up? The Gauntlet of Torment had been the Galactic Coalition's answer to the human problem. When these strange bipedal creatures had first appeared on the galactic stage, they had seemed harmless enough. Sure, they were unusually aggressive and had an alarming tendency to survive things that should have killed them, but every species had quirks. Then came the Proxima incident. A single human freighter, the Lucky Shot, had somehow managed to outmaneuver 3 coalition destroyers and escape with a cargo hold full of prisoners they had liberated from a mining colony. The captain, a scruffy human named Jake Morrison, had transmitted a message that still gave coalition commanders nightmares. Thanks for the workout, boys. Same time next week? The coalition high command had decided that humans needed to be properly evaluated. If they were going to be a threat, better to know exactly what kind of threat they represented, hence the Gauntlet of Torment. Attention test subjects, Vex 9 announced through the intercom, his translator struggling with human vocal patterns. Prepare for trial phase 4, the maze of endless night. Through the observation window, he watched the humans react to this announcement. Subject Delta 7, whose actual name was apparently Maria Santos according to her file, turned to her companion, Subject Gamma 12. Oh good, she said, grinning widely. I was getting bored with the obstacle course. What do you think, Tommy? Another maze? Tommy Reeves, Subject Gamma 12, cracked his knuckles with disturbing enthusiasm. I hope this one has better lighting than the last one. I nearly tripped over my own feet in that darkness simulation. Nearly tripped? Maria laughed. You face-planted into that wall so hard I thought you'd broken your nose. Hey, that wall came out of nowhere, Tommy protested, rubbing his nose self-consciously. Besides, I still finished in record time. Vex 9's mandibles clicked faster. Record time? The maze of endless night had taken his own elite forces an average of 6 hours to complete. Most gave up after 4 hours of wandering in absolute darkness, pursued by holographic nightmares designed to trigger every known psychological fear response. Sir, Kral 2 ventured cautiously. Perhaps we should increase the difficulty parameters? Increase them? Vex 9's voice rose to a pitch that made several nearby technicians wince. We've already set them beyond maximum operational limits. The fear projectors are running at 300% normal capacity. The darkness is so complete it absorbs light. We even added those carnivorous sound shadows from the nightmare dimension. Maybe the humans are immune to fear? Suggested Technician Blorp 5 from his position at the control console. Vex 9 and Kral 2 turned to stare at him. Blorp 5's gelatinous form quivered under their attention. Immune to fear. Vex 9 repeated slowly. That's not possible. Fear is a universal constant. Every sentient species experiences fear. It's a basic survival mechanism. Maybe they're not sentient? Blorp 5 offered hopefully. They built faster than light spacecraft, Kral 2 pointed out, and their tactical coordination suggests high-level intelligence. Then maybe they're just really stupid? Blorp 5 tried again. On the display, the humans were being led into the entrance chamber of the maze of endless night. Maria was chatting cheerfully with the escort drones, asking them about their home planets and whether they had families. One of the drones, clearly flustered by this unexpected social interaction, had begun responding with increasingly detailed information about its manufacturing specifications. "No," Vex 9 said grimly, watching Maria somehow convince the drone to show her pictures of its favorite charging station. "They're not stupid. There's something far worse." The massive doors of the maze sealed shut with a resounding clang that echoed through the testing facility. Immediately, the maze interior plunged into a darkness so absolute that it seemed to devour light itself. The fear projectors hummed to life, filling the space with psychological torment designed to reduce grown warriors to whimpering children. For exactly 3 minutes and 47 seconds, there was blessed silence. Then came the singing. "Oh, we're off to see the wizard," Maria's voice echoed through the maze's communication system. "The wonderful Wizard of Oz." Tommy's voice joined in enthusiastically. Because of the wonderful things he does." Vex 9 stared at the audio readouts in complete bewilderment. "What are they doing?" "I believe, sir," Crowl 2 said faintly, "they are singing." "Singing? In the maze of endless night, while being psychologically tortured by fear projectors? It appears so, sir." The humans continued their musical performance as they navigated the maze with disturbing efficiency. The sound shadows, those terrifying creatures that fed on fear and despair, seemed to be avoiding them entirely. In fact, several of the creatures had gathered near the singers and appeared to be swaying to the rhythm. "Sir," Blorp 5 called out urgently, "we're getting some unusual readings from the fear projectors." "Unusual how?" "Well, sir, it seems the humans are having the opposite of the intended effect on the psychological warfare systems. The fear levels in the maze are actually decreasing." Vex 9 felt a migraine developing behind his primary optical cluster. "Decreasing? How is that possible?" "The humans appear to be generating positive emotional energy at a rate that's overwhelming the fear projectors," Blorp 5 explained, his gelatinous form rippling with confusion. "It's like they're weaponizing happiness, sir." "Weaponizing happiness," Vex 9 repeated numbly. "Of course they are." The singing had evolved into what the humans apparently called a duet, with Maria and Tommy harmonizing as they made their way through the maze's most psychologically devastating sections. The corridor of childhood trauma had them reminiscing about their favorite school teachers. The chamber of existential dread had somehow triggered a philosophical discussion about the meaning of life that was both uplifting and surprisingly insightful. "You know what I love about mazes?" Maria's voice drifted through the speakers as she navigated the pit of infinite despair. "They always have a solution. You just have to keep trying different paths until you find the right one." "Yeah," Tommy agreed, his voice coming from the nearby Valley of Lost Souls. "It's like life, really. Sometimes you hit a dead end, but there's always another way forward." "That's beautiful, Tommy. Very philosophical." "Thanks. I got it from a fortune cookie." Vex 9 buried his head in his primary manipulator appendages. "They're giving each other life advice while being tortured by nightmare creatures." "Sir," Kral 2 said quietly, "look at Section 7. Vex 9 looked. In Section 7, one of the sound shadows had apparently decided to join the human expedition. The creature, which normally inspired terror in seasoned veterans, was following Maria around like an oversized, interdimensional puppy. She had named it Steve. "Steve's a good boy. Aren't you, Steve?" Maria was saying as she scratched behind what might have been the creature's ears. "Yes, you are." "Who's a good eldritch horror?" "You are." "You are." Steve, the terror of the nightmare dimension, was practically purring. "I need a vacation," Vex 9 muttered. "Somewhere far away. Maybe one of those nice agricultural worlds where the most dangerous thing is an overly enthusiastic vegetable." Blorp 5 called out again. "They've reached the final chamber." The final chamber of ultimate despair was the gauntlet's last test. It was a perfect sphere, completely smooth and featureless, designed to trigger claustrophobia, sensory deprivation, and existential panic all at once. The chamber would slowly shrink over the course of several hours, forcing the occupants to confront their deepest fears before finally crushing them. It was considered the most psychologically brutal test in the Coalition arsenal. Through the monitoring system, They watched as Maria and Tommy were deposited in the center of the chamber. Steve the Sound Shadow had somehow managed to follow them, despite the chamber being specifically designed to keep such creatures out. "Well," Maria said, looking around the blank walls, "this is cozy, very minimalist." Tommy agreed. "I like what they've done with the place. It really captures that we're about to be psychologically broken aesthetic. You think they'll mind if we redecorate a bit? Only one way to find out." What happened next would be discussed in coalition military academies for generations to come. The humans, faced with the most psychologically devastating environment ever created, decided to make it more comfortable. Tommy somehow produced a deck of cards from his pocket. Maria began telling stories about her childhood dog, a creature that apparently had the personality of a saint and the destructive capabilities of a small tornado. Steve the Sound Shadow curled up in a corner and took a nap. As the chamber began its programmed shrinking sequence, the humans adapted with characteristic pragmatism. When the space became too small for cards, they switched to word games. When it became too small for word games, they sang songs. When it became too small for singing, they simply sat quietly and engaged in what they called comfortable silence. "Sir," Krail 2 whispered, "the psychological stress monitors are reading 0. 0? Ben, 0 stress, sir. If anything, their relaxation levels are increasing." Vex 9 stared at the readouts. According to every instrument in the facility, the two humans trapped in the most psychologically devastating environment ever created were more relaxed than someone taking a spa vacation. "Abort the test," he said quietly. "Sir, abort the test." Vex 9's voice cracked with strain. "Get them out of there before they what, sir?" "Yes, before they decide to redecorate the entire facility." The emergency extraction protocols engaged, and within minutes Maria and Tommy were standing in the debriefing chamber, looking slightly disappointed. "Oh, are we done already?" Maria asked. "I was just getting comfortable." "Yeah," Tommy added. "And I had a great story about my Uncle Bob's fishing trip that I wanted to tell. It involves 3 raccoons, a boat motor, and a very confused fish." Vex 9 approached them cautiously, as if they might spontaneously combust or, worse, offer him life advice. "Test subjects," he began formally. "How would you rate your experience in the gauntlet of torment?" Maria and Tommy exchanged glances. "Well," Maria said thoughtfully, "it was fun, but it could use some improvements." "Improvements?" Vex 9's voice went up several octaves. "More variety in the challenges," Tommy suggested. "And maybe some snacks in the waiting areas. I get hungry when I'm having fun." "Having fun?" Vex 9 repeated weakly. "You were having fun." "Oh, absolutely," Maria said with enthusiasm. "It was like the world's most elaborate escape room." "When do we get to do the next level?" Vex 9 looked at Krail 2. Krail 2 looked at Blorp 5. Blorp 5 made a sound like a deflating balloon. "There is no next level," Vex 9 said faintly. This was the ultimate test. The final challenge. The thing that was supposed to break your spirits and crush your will to fight. Maria blinked. "Oh, well, that's disappointing. Are you sure you don't have anything more challenging? Maybe something with lava? Or giant robots?" "I love giant robots." And that, Vex 9 realized with dawning horror, was when he understood the true nature of the human threat. They weren't just impossible to break. They weren't just immune to fear or pain or psychological torture. They were having fun. Somewhere in the facility, Steve the Sound Shadow was probably still napping peacefully, dreaming interdimensional dreams of belly rubs and being called a good boy. And tomorrow, Vex 9 would have to file a report explaining to Coalition High Command why their ultimate weapon had been turned into a recreational activity. He really needed that vacation. 3 days later, Vex 9 stood before the Coalition War Council, his report clutched in his trembling manipulator appendages. The holographic projections of 12 different species stared down at him from their respective homeworlds, each one more terrifying than the last. Admiral Thex Prime of the Void Hunters leaned forward, her razor-sharp teeth glinting in the blue light. "Commander Vex 9, she hissed. Explain to me how two primitive humans managed to turn our most advanced psychological warfare facility into what your report describes as a delightful afternoon activity. Vex 9 cleared his throat nervously. Well, Admiral, the humans demonstrated an unprecedented resistance to our standard intimidation protocols. They appear to possess an innate ability to find enjoyment in situations specifically designed to cause maximum psychological distress. Enjoyment? General Krex 4 of the Iron Legion slammed his mechanical fist on his desk. Our ancestors conquered 17 galaxies using fear as our primary weapon. How can any species be immune to fear? That's just it, sir. Vex 9 replied, pulling up the test footage. They're not immune to fear. They acknowledge dangerous situations, but they seem to process them differently. Watch this. The council watched in stunned silence as Maria Santos cheerfully waved at a holographic monster that was supposed to represent their deepest nightmares. The creature, a writhing mass of tentacles and teeth, actually waved back. By the ancient codes, whispered Counselor Zeph 8 of the Crystal Collective. It's responding to her positive energy. How is that possible? The humans emit what our scientists are calling weaponized optimism, Vex 9 explained. Their emotional output is so aggressively positive that it overwhelms our fear-based systems. We've had to completely recalibrate our psychological warfare equipment. Admiral Thex Prime's expression grew even more menacing. Then we'll use physical challenges. Surely their fragile organic bodies can't withstand our combat trials. About that, Vex 9 said weakly. We may have a problem there too. 2 hours later, Vex 9 found himself back in the testing facility, this time with the entire War Council observing remotely. The humans had been given a day to rest, during which they had somehow convinced the facility's AI to teach them card games and had organized a small talent show for the security drones. Attention test subjects, Vex 9 announced, trying to inject some authority back into his voice. Today you will face the crucible of combat. This is a series of physical challenges designed to test the limits of biological endurance. Maria looked up from where she was braiding Steve the Sound Shadow's interdimensional tentacles. Oh, more games. This place just keeps getting better. Tommy finished his stretching routine and grinned. I hope they have something with more cardio this time. Yesterday's mental exercises were fun, but I could use a good workout. Lieutenant Kral 2 sidled up to Vex 9. Sir, perhaps we should mention that the Crucible has never been completed by any biological species. The mortality rate is approximately 97%. They'll figure it out. Vex 9 muttered darkly. The first challenge was the gravity well of despair, a chamber where the gravitational force increased exponentially every 30 seconds. Most species lasted about 3 minutes before being crushed by their own body weight. The previous record holder, a genetically enhanced super soldier from the Titan Collective, had managed 4 minutes and 12 seconds before requesting immediate extraction. Maria and Tommy were loaded into the chamber with standard monitoring equipment. As the gravity began to increase, they adapted with characteristic human ingenuity. Okay, Maria said, her voice slightly strained as the gravity reached 3 times normal. This is like that weighted vest training my old gym used to do. Yeah, Tommy agreed, doing what appeared to be modified push-ups as the gravity hit 5 times normal. Remember when Coach Martinez used to make us run laps with those weighted packs? This is just like that, but more intense. At 10 times normal gravity, they were crawling on their hands and knees. But they were still moving forward and somehow maintaining a conversation about their favorite pizza toppings. Sir, Blorp 5 called out urgently. They've broken the previous record. By how much? They're at 8 minutes and counting. The gravity is now at 15 times normal, and they're still conscious. Still conscious? Vex 9 rushed to the observation window. The humans were indeed still conscious, though they had adapted their strategy. They were now moving in a coordinated crawl, with Tommy leading and Maria following, both of them taking turns encouraging the other. Come on, Maria, Tommy grunted, his face red with effort. Remember that hiking trip in Colorado? The one where we had to carry Jake down the mountain after he twisted his ankle? Oh yeah, Maria panted, and you complained the whole time about how heavy he was, but you still carried him for 6 miles. He was heavy. And he kept making jokes the entire time. How was I supposed to stay mad at him? At 20 times normal gravity, they had stopped moving forward but were somehow still maintaining consciousness through what appeared to be a combination of meditation techniques and shared memories of their friends. They're treating it like a team-building exercise, Kral 2 observed in amazement. Of course they are, Vex 9 replied numbly. When the gravity reached 25 times normal, both humans finally collapsed, but they were still conscious and actually apologizing to each other for not being able to continue. Sorry, Tommy, Maria whispered. I think this is my limit. No worries. Tommy whispered back. We gave it our best shot. That was actually kind of fun. Vex 9 repeated for what felt like the 1,000th time that week. The emergency extraction pulled them out, and within minutes they were back on their feet, looking disappointed but not discouraged. That was intense, Maria said, stretching her arms. What's next? The next challenge was the maze of infinite pain, where every step triggered a different form of physical agony designed to incapacitate even the most hardened warriors. Most species didn't make it past the first corridor. Maria and Tommy approached it like they were planning a weekend hiking trip. Okay, Maria said, studying the entrance. This looks like it's going to hurt. You ready for this? As ready as I'll ever be, Tommy replied, cracking his neck. Remember that obstacle race we did last year? The one with the electric wires and the ice bath? The Tough Mudder? Oh yeah, that was brutal, but we finished it. We did more than finish it. We came back the next year and did it again. They entered the maze and immediately their monitoring equipment registered pain levels that should have rendered them unconscious. Instead, they started providing running commentary. Ow, okay, that's definitely some kind of nerve stimulator, Maria said as she stepped on what appeared to be an innocent floor tile. Burns. But it's not as bad as when I touched that electric fence as a kid. Electric fence? Tommy asked, carefully avoiding a wall that was glowing with malevolent energy. Why did you touch an electric fence? I was 8 and curious. Mom told me not to touch it, but I had to know what it felt like. Maria paused as she triggered another pain field. Yep, that's similar, but with more of a tingling sensation. You were a weird kid, says the guy who used to collect beetles. They continued through the maze, treating each new form of agony like a mildly interesting scientific experiment. When they encountered the chamber of burning needles, they compared it to acupuncture. The corridor of crushing weights reminded them of a particularly intense CrossFit session. The pool of acid rain was like the world's worst spa treatment, sir, Blorp 5 reported, his gelatinous form practically vibrating with confusion. They're actually rating the different pain stimuli on what they call a fun scale. A fun scale? Apparently, the burning needles rate a 7 out of 10 for intensity, but only a 4 out of 10 for creativity. They're disappointed that we didn't include more variety. Vex 9 watched as the humans helped each other through the final section of the maze, a gauntlet of every form of physical torture the Coalition had ever devised. They emerged 43 minutes later, looking tired but oddly satisfied. That was challenging, Maria admitted, accepting a towel from one of the medical drones, but it could use some work. The transitions between different types of pain were a bit jarring. Yeah, Tommy agreed, and some of those challenges were kind of repetitive. How many different ways can you make someone's feet hurt? Constructive criticism. Maria nodded. I like that in a training program. The final challenge was the arena of ultimate combat, where they would face holographic opponents designed to exploit every known weakness of biological entities. The arena could generate enemies that adapted in real time to counter any strategy or fighting style. This should finally stop them. Admiral Thix Prime's voice crackled through the communicator. No amount of optimism can overcome superior tactics and firepower. Maria and Tommy stood in the center of the arena as the first wave of opponents materialized around them. The holograms were perfect replicas of the Coalition's most feared warriors. Void Hunters with their razor claws, Iron Legion soldiers with their crushing strength, and Crystal Collective drones with their energy weapons. The humans looked around at their enemies with interest rather than fear. "Oh, cool," Maria said. "They look just like the guys from the briefing videos. The detail work is incredible." "The AI must be really advanced," Tommy agreed. "Look at how they move. It's almost like they're really here." The holographic warriors attacked with lethal precision, expecting to overwhelm the humans with superior numbers and firepower. Instead, they encountered something no military strategist had ever planned for: humans who treated combat like a cooperative dance. Maria and Tommy moved together with an instinctive coordination that seemed to baffle the arena's tactical AI. When Maria ducked, Tommy was already covering her position. When Tommy rolled left, Maria was there to watch his back. They communicated through glances and subtle gestures, flowing around their enemies like water around rocks. "They're not fighting like soldiers," Krail too observed. "They're fighting like friends." Vex 9 finished quietly. The arena's AI, designed to adapt to any fighting style, couldn't seem to find a counter for the humans' approach. Every time it developed a strategy to exploit an apparent weakness, the humans would compensate for each other's vulnerabilities. When the AI tried to separate them, they found ways to reunite. When it tried to overwhelm them with numbers, they turned the enemies against each other. "Look at this," Tommy called out as he used a Void Hunter's momentum to send it crashing into a Crystal Collective drone. "The big guy's claws can cut right through the robot's armor." Environmental combat. Maria laughed, dodging an energy blast that destroyed 2 Iron Legion soldiers. "I love environmental combat." They were treating the life or death struggle like a video game, finding creative ways to use the arena's own features against their opponents. When they discovered that the energy weapons could overload if fired continuously, they began an elaborate game of keep away that left the Crystal Collective drones shooting themselves. "Sir," Blorp 5 reported weakly, "the arena's AI is requesting technical support. It's never encountered a tactical approach like this before." "What kind of tactical approach?" Vex 9 asked, though he was beginning to suspect he didn't want to know. "According to the combat analysis, they're using something called friendship as their primary strategy. The AI doesn't have any protocols for dealing with that." After 2 hours of continuous combat, the arena finally ran out of enemy configurations. The humans had defeated every possible combination of opponents, not through superior firepower or tactical genius, but through an unshakable trust in each other and an ability to find joy even in the most desperate circumstances. Maria and Tommy stood in the center of the arena, surrounded by the fading holograms of their defeated enemies, and high-fived. "That was awesome," Maria said, her face glowing with excitement. "Can we do it again?" "Absolutely," Tommy agreed. "But maybe next time with different enemies? I'd love to see what you guys could come up with if you really put your minds to it." Vex 9 turned away from the observation window and faced the War Council's holographic representatives. 12 of the galaxy's most feared military leaders stared back at him in stunned silence. "Well?" Admiral Thex Prime finally asked. "The humans have completed every test," Vex 9 reported. "They've turned our psychological warfare into entertainment, our physical torture into exercise, and our ultimate combat simulation into what they call quality time with friends." "Recommendations?" General Krex 4 asked grimly. Vex 9 took a deep breath. "Don't fight them. Whatever you do, don't fight them. They don't just win battles, they make you want to be on their side. Half our security drones have asked for transfers to human ships, and our AI has started requesting friendship advice." "That's impossible," Counselor Zeph 8 protested. "Sir," Blorp 5 interrupted, "the humans are asking if they can stay for dinner. They want to cook something called pizza for the staff as a thank you gift for the fun tests. You see?" Vex 9 spread his manipulator appendages helplessly. "They want to cook for us. After we spent 3 days trying to break their spirits, they want to make us food." In the background, they could hear Maria organizing what she called a pizza party with the enthusiastic assistance of Steve the Sound Shadow and a growing number of facility drones. "The scary thing," Vex 9 continued, "is that everyone wants to go. Even the Void Hunter security team is asking about dietary restrictions. Admiral Thex Prime closed her eyes and rubbed her temples. What do you recommend we do with them? Give them whatever they want, Vex 9 said firmly. Make them allies. Offer them positions in our fleet. Whatever it takes to keep them happy. Because I guarantee you don't want to see what happens when they get really creative. And if they refuse our offers? Vex 9 looked back at the window, where Maria was teaching a security drone how to toss pizza dough while Tommy provided encouraging commentary. Then we learned to make really good pizza. 3 months later, Commander Vex 9 sat in his new office aboard the human ship Second Chances, wearing a custom-made uniform with the words Honorary Human embroidered on the collar. Through his window, he could see the Coalition fleet conducting joint training exercises with human vessels, a sight that would have been unthinkable just a few short months ago. His desk communicator chimed, and Maria's voice filled the room. Hey Vex, Tommy and I are organizing a talent show for the fleet. You still planning to do that juggling routine you've been practicing? Vex 9 looked down at the 3 spheres sitting on his desk and smiled, an expression that would have terrified his former subordinates. Wouldn't miss it for all the stars in the galaxy. Great. Oh, and Steve wants to know if you've seen his favorite charging cable. He left it in the observation deck yesterday. I'll help him look for it, Vex 9 promised. As the communication ended, he reflected on the changes the humans had brought to the galaxy. They had done something no conqueror had ever managed. They had turned enemies into friends simply by being themselves. The Coalition War Council had officially redesignated humans from potential threat to essential allies, though everyone understood that was really just a polite way of saying please don't make us try to fight them again. Vex 9 picked up his juggling spheres and headed for the door. He had a talent show to practice for, and he wasn't about to disappoint his friends. After all, humans had taught him the most important lesson in the galaxy. Sometimes the best way to win is to make sure everyone has fun doing it.